Major Elena Ruiz sat alone in the quiet glow of the operations room and stared at the mountain. On the screen, it looked harmless. A brown ridge outside the city of Calm, smooth and ancient, like a sleeping animal. To the casual eye, it was only rock and dust. To her, it was a locked door with something terrible behind it. For months, the briefings had repeated the same grim truth. In 2009, Western intelligence discovered a facility called Fordow buried under that mountain. 80 meters of granite and reinforced concrete wrapped around halls full of centrifuges. The engineers who built it believed they had created the perfect sanctuary. They were almost right. Elena had spent her career studying weapons and tactics. She knew the limits of bombs the way a surgeon knows the limits of bone. Standard guided munitions could not touch Fordow. Even the bunker busters from older wars would die on that much stone. Diplomats tried to solve the problem with words. Years passed. The centrifuges kept spinning. Now the problem belonged to physics. Across the table sat Colonel Harris, an old bomber pilot with tired eyes and a calm voice. He slid a photograph toward her. The image showed a weapon longer than a city bus and heavier than a fire truck. The GBU-57 Massive Ordnance Penetrator. The colonel spoke without drama. He called it the physics package. 80% hardened steel alloy, 20% explosive, built to survive impact and carve its way into the earth before it detonated, designed to dig its own grave. Elena turned the photo sideways and studied the strange fins on the tail. They were not solid wings like ordinary bombs. They were latticed grids that folded flat and snapped open in the airstream. SpaceX uses fins like that, she said. The colonel nodded. Same idea. Solid fins would never fit inside a stealth bomber. These do. He explained the doctrine in simple terms. One bomb to crack the shell, a second bomb to fly into the hole and finish the job. The double tap. It sounded brutal. It sounded precise. It sounded like the only answer. The plan came together piece by piece over long nights. The strike would require a machine that barely existed and a team that had never rehearsed together. At the center of it all stood the B-2 Spirit. Elena loved that aircraft the way sailors love old ships. No vertical tails, no hard angles. A silent black wing shaped to confuse radar and slip through defended skies. Only 19 of them in the world. Expensive, delicate, and irreplaceable. The B-2 was the only airplane on Earth with a bomb bay large enough to carry the 30,000-pound weapon. Everything else was either too small or too loud. She imagined the route to Iran and felt the tension in her chest. The mountain was surrounded by layered air defenses, S-300 batteries, early warning radars, missiles that could reach high and far. A B-52 would die out there. A B-1 would light up every screen. The B-2 would simply pass overhead like a shadow. But shadows need eyes. That role fell to the F-35C Lightning II. Sleek gray fighters with cameras built into their skin and brains full of sensors. They would fly ahead of the bomber, hunting for threats and feeding data through invisible links. Quarterbacks of a dangerous game. People on television argued about whether the F-35 could dogfight. Elena smiled whenever she heard it. Dogfights belonged to old wars. In this mission, the F-35 had one job: make sure the bomber never got seen. And if the shadows failed, there would be noise. The EA-18G Growler waited in the wings like an ugly guardian. Jamming pods hung under its wings. Tiny propellers spun to generate power for electronics, hungry enough to dim a city block. The Growler would drown enemy radars in a storm of static if anything started to go wrong. Insurance policy, the colonel called it. The choreography filled Elena's mind as she drove home each night. She imagined the timeline like music. First, the blind. Growlers flooding the spectrum. F-35s listening and mapping the threats. Then the approach. The B-2 crossing borders in